You bump into a chair, and you say, sorry, to the chair. Someone talks over you in a meeting. You apologize for speaking. A friend cancels plans. You apologize for having made them. Someone raises their voice at you. And somehow, before they even finish, the word is already leaving your mouth. Sorry. Not because you did something wrong, but because somewhere, deep inside you, existing itself started to feel like something that needed to be excused. If that hit a little too close, stay with me. Because what most people call being polite or being too sensitive is actually something much more specific and much more interesting. People who over-apologize aren't weak. They're not trying to be annoying. They're not even doing it consciously half the time. It's a pattern, and like all patterns, it didn't appear out of nowhere. It was built, slowly, over years, usually starting long before you were old enough to understand what was happening. The apology became a tool, a way to keep the peace, to shrink yourself just enough that nothing bad would happen. And the terrifying part? It worked, so your brain kept doing it. But here's what's fascinating. The very habit that once protected you may now be quietly costing you more than you realize. Let's start with where this actually comes from. Psychologist Albert Bandura's work on social learning theory shows us that children don't just learn behaviors from direct instruction. They absorb them from their environment. If you grew up in a household where conflict was dangerous, unpredictable, or emotionally explosive, your developing brain learned one critical lesson: neutralize the threat before it escalates. The apology was that neutralizer. You didn't decide to become an over-apologizer. You were trained into it. Every time saying sorry diffused a tense moment, your brain logged it as a survival strategy. And survival strategies don't just fade away when the danger does. They stay, they calcify, they become your default setting. This connects to what psychologists call Fawn Response, a term expanded by trauma therapist Pete Walker. You've heard of fight, flight, and freeze, but fawn is the fourth response. It's what happens when someone learns that the safest way to handle threat is to appease, to please, to make themselves as unthreatening as possible. Over-apologizing is fawn in its most socially acceptable form, and it runs deep. Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people with high anxiety sensitivity, those who are particularly attuned to disapproval, apologize not just for their actions, but preemptively, before anything bad even happens, as if the apology itself might prevent the punishment they're bracing for. But here's what you need to understand. At the core of excessive apologizing is something called hypervigilance to emotional cues. Your nervous system is constantly scanning the room, checking faces, measuring tone of voice, calculating. Is someone upset? Is it because of me? Could it be because of me? And when there's any uncertainty at all, the apology comes out, because it feels safer to take the blame than to wait and find out the answer. You became, without knowing it, an emotional first responder, always rushing to the scene before the alarm has even finished sounding. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because the apology feels like humility. It looks like humility. But psychologists have found it often functions as something else entirely. Dr. Harriet Lerner, author of Why Won't You Apologize, makes a distinction that changes everything. A genuine apology is about the other person. It says, I see that I hurt you, and that matters to me. But a reflexive apology, the automatic, constant, anxious kind, is often about you. It's about managing your own discomfort, relieving your own fear of disapproval, closing a loop in your own nervous system, which means, ironically, that chronic over-apologizing can actually be a subtle form of self-protection, disguised as selflessness. And there's a cost the other person pays. When you apologize for things that aren't your fault, you subtly shift the emotional weight of every interaction. The person who did nothing wrong now has to reassure you. No, it's fine. You don't have to be sorry. They become the caretaker of your anxiety. Over time, that is exhausting for people who love you. Worse still, and this is the part that stings, research shows that over-apologizers are often taken less seriously. Not because people are cruel, but because constant apology signals low confidence. It tells the room that you don't fully trust your right to be here. The very habit that was meant to make you safer can slowly teach everyone around you to underestimate you. So what do you do with that? You don't just stop apologizing. You can't unlearn a survival response with a decision. What you can do, slowly, imperfectly, is start pausing before the word comes out. Ask yourself, did I actually do something wrong? Or am I just uncomfortable? Because there is a version of you that doesn't need to take up less space to stay safe. A version of you that can sit in a moment of tension without immediately volunteering to be the cause of it. You learn to apologize to survive, but surviving was never supposed to be the ceiling. The people who apologize for everything aren't broken. They're people who cared so much, for so long, about everyone else's comfort, that they forgot they were allowed to have some too. You don't need to earn your place in the room. You were always allowed to be in it. If this described you more than you expected, you're not alone. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video. And if you want to go deeper, watch this one next.